Okay, so great to see quite a few people coming today. And really what we're about today was about having a check-in to see where we are ready for the RSHE guidance in September. I know a lot of you probably are ready for 2026 and hopefully this will just be a little bit checklist for you. And if you're not ready, hopefully it will help you structure what you need to do now, because we very much are on a bit of a countdown now to get everything done. So those of you who haven't been to any of our webinars before, my name is Sarah. I'm the programme lead for the 3 to 11 PSHE programme. The way I'm structuring it today, sort of help with the step-by-step approach, is we're gonna go through 5 steps. We're going to identify where you are, help to look at where you are now, look at any strengths that you've got and opportunities. We're going to consider how to make sure this process is meaningful. This, obviously we believe this work around PSHE and RSHE is really important, but it can be very easy when things are compliant, when there's a lot to do, to end up just ticking boxes, and we don't want it to be about that. And then hopefully by the end, you've got a really good overview of what needs to be done between now and the end of term to be ready for September. And as we go through, we're going to look at the checklists and key documents and what other support there is for you between now and the end of term. A reminder, we've got this new guidance. It was statutory. So the 2025 guidance is what becomes statutory in 2026. It replaces the previous guidance. We're not going to look in detail about what's in it today. We've covered that a lot. Very welcome to go back and look at any of our previous webinars about that. A reminder that we have all our materials have been fully updated. So when you look on the portal, all the new materials have got that RSHE 2026 sash on them. And it needs to be, so now some of you may have started using it, but really those materials with any adaptations you may want to make need to be started to be used from September. So you need to make sure that you've had a chance to look at them, that your policy is in line with that. That's really important before you start using them, and that you've carried out your consultation and implemented anything that's come out from that. As a reminder as well, I will refer to this today in the Get Ready September 2026 section. There is a whole guide about review and consultation. So although this hasn't been built as a policy webinar, we are actually going to use the reviewing, what you need to do to review that policy as your steps to check where you are. We've tried to build that in a really helpful way, and that policy content checklist will be helpful for that too. Just going to go through 5 areas that you need to be aware of. So we'll start with step 1. Hopefully a lot of you have already done this, but if you haven't, this is something I would really urge that you look at in the next week, with real priority. We're looking at your starting point. What is in your curriculum? What are your communication channels to talk about PSHE and RSHE within it? What are staff telling you? What's their experience? Where do they need to gain? Where do they need training? And where are your links to other policies? The key part of this, the key message from this is, by reviewing where you are now, you're going to be looking at is what you've got in place compliant. So if you are moving across the new materials, the Jigsaw PSHE material, that will be, we know that's compliant to a certain extent, but of course you need to make sure that it's compliant for the pupils in your school. Is it meeting children's needs? So different things will work in different schools. So in order to do that, you need to look at making sure this guidance with its 7 key principles is about making sure that it works for children in your school, that everyone is ready to teach it, and it's a positive whole school approach. So making sure, are you building on good practice? This is what you can do. This new guidance isn't totally new. It's an update, it's enhancing, it's building on what was there before. So you need to start, have you thought about what's working well for PSHE in your school? If you've got some really good things going on, it's not saying throw it out, you can build on that. And how do you know? That's a really key thing to know. What do you know is working well? How do you know it? Keep a record of that, build on it, and then you know what you can make better. So when we are teaching, for example, this totally new topic of personal safety, you may well be teaching some things in other ways in your school, but are there any particular local issues? When we talk about water safety, for those of you that are near canals, for example, you might want to look at those lessons and add a little bit and make changes or identify where you could extend that. Are there any issues that are coming up in your local community to do with dental health, for example, or social issues that are coming up? They may need further support with as well. So when we're looking at the curriculum over the next year, are there areas where you could build, enhance that, and work with local partners? Also, you will have lots of things in practice that are really great for getting in touch with parents, and they may be to do with PSHE, or they may have other things. So, what else is going on across the school that helps you to communicate with parents and carers and the community? And what have you got that can help you engage with families who are harder to reach? We'll look at that a little bit in a little bit more detail, and how can you improve that? Making sure everyone else in your school who needs to be involved is. This should not be, this whole school approach is really, really key in the guidance. It's key in the statutory aspect of it. So who else in your school needs to be involved in this? If you've been working on this by yourself, you need to really make sure now that you're involving other people, and we'll look at who that is in a minute. And making sure that it's useful to your school community. So where you need to personalise it, looking at where you need to make those differences is really important. You've got your snapshot overview. This is what you can do is stand back, look at the overviews that we've got for you. And so, for example, if you know that I mentioned dental health, you know that that's an issue. Start by sitting back, looking back at some of these documents. Where is it covered? Where's that knowledge content? Okay, let's look at those lessons. Where can we build the skills? Where do we think our pupils might need a little bit more help? So using some of those overviews can be a really helpful place to get started. So then you need to look beyond that as well. So where might children need help with their emotional literacy around some of these, the language that they need, all these different aspects. When you've identified what you need, then you can identify how to make those changes. The changes we've actually made to the content are woven in. As I said, I'm not going through those. They're not evenly spread. Some areas have needed more updating than others. So once you've looked at where you're starting, what do you think was a bit of a gap before? Check whether that's in that new content. So hopefully this is something that most of you have already done by now. You've identified where the changes are, where they meet your pupils' needs, where you might need to make further changes. And as far as it comes to compliance, to see where this is matched, we've got our mapping documents as well. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at those. That one on the top there is that tick list, which shows you exactly which lesson, showing that spiral curriculum. Some of you will find that second new document we didn't have before a little bit more useful, which has the key statutory outcomes, but it shows where they all are and where we most strongly meet that guidance. A lot of the issues that you will find are important to you in your school, or you think you maybe have worries or concerns, will be reflected in that guidance. So actually, let's use this RSHE guidance, let's use this wording to help us make things better in our schools. So if you look a bit more closely at that, for example, it shows you that top one about hazards, including fire risks that may cause harm, injury, or risk, and ways to reduce risks. That's the standard, and it'll be showing you where it's covered most strongly and where supporting coverage is. So for you as a PSHE lead, as a team, you could go and have a look at those lessons, go, actually, we could get the fire service in to support with this, or we could get community workers in, or we could just add some more content. So there's different ways that you can do that. And again, all the other, we've got all those different topics that are there that go beyond the RSHE standards as well. This is not just about RSHE, make it about improving your whole PSHE programme. And then you've got those detailed puzzle maps as well, showing you where all those changes are. So all of those are there for you to use. Just a reminder, if you're not sure where all that content is, it's all linked to, we're showing you where it all is in that Get Ready for September 2026 bit. And if you look at it, you've got that long list of where everything is on that as well. So another thing you need to be really aware of as well is when you're talking to staff, being aware that at the moment you may well be using that top layer of lessons. That's the existing content that's been there and been kept updated for the last few years. That bottom layer with the RSHE sash, those are the new lessons that you're going to be looking to use from September. And at the moment as well, if you click on, you can see where we've got a new puzzle map for 2026. That's all there. So if anybody says, I want to go and have a look at this, I want to check it, they can go and have a look for it there. So we're trying to make it as clear as we can. If you've got any questions, you're not sure or something, just ask us. So that's your first stage. We're making sure that all of that content that you've looked at what's new, make sure it suits the needs of your schools, and then you've got your step 2. So we are a bit late to be setting up lots of staff and governor meetings in terms. So I'm hoping that most of you have already done that. But if you haven't, you do still need to make sure that you have had a chance to talk to staff and governors about these changes. So governors have a statutory duty, a statutory responsibility in relation to this. So they need to know what's going on. So if you can just find out who the governor is who is responsible, or the chair of governors, and make sure that they're aware of this. You can send them links to some of our videos on it. And it also, if governors know about it, they'll be able in the best position to talk to parents as well who've got questions about it as well. But again, we want to make sure that staff feel confident, because uncertainty in staff can undermine their confidence in the whole process. So you need to share what changes are, explain the process, and then you can gather further feedback. It doesn't have to be a big, long process. So I just want you to have a little think now about what that might look like, especially where we are. So first of all, you need to think about, what do your teachers need to know about this process? So you might want to jot it down. I don't know if people want to put some things in the chat box, although I can't see it at the moment. So I'm saying these things very confidently and then realise that I can't see them. But think about what it is that your teachers might need at this stage, that they are ready for September 2026, that they understand what the changes are. And just to go through what some of those are, we might be looking at why they're teaching some of these topics. They're going to need a structured spiral curriculum so they can teach it. They're going to need to know what kind of language is appropriate for some of these topics, especially if they're new, and maybe want support with how to handle those unexpected questions or sensitive topics. I'm not saying we've got to have that all in place right now, but you might want to think about what it'd be helpful for you to know that, so that you can plan that in to your policy, making sure that those systems are in place for your colleagues throughout the year. Then think about what that training, if you're going to be able, if you have got some time set aside, you might be attending today and planning on talking to your colleagues this week or in the next week. Think about what it is you're going to need to talk to them about. So you might want to talk about what the key changes are, how to handle some sensitive topics, or say, okay, that's something in the training, is that something that people need help with? We can build that in next year, working out how to do it. How they might want to support children with SEND, and linking RSHE to safeguarding and pastoral care. Now, there's a lot there, so I know that between now and the end of term, you're not going to have time to put all of that in. But what you could do is you could gather what it is that staff needs at this point, in a small part of a staff meeting, and then make sure you've got that in place to support next year. And again, you could put that into your policy if it's drafted at the moment. If you're drafting a policy at the moment, you could put in there that these are the things that we're going to revisit during each year and check in, and these are the types of things that we're going to support staff with, and have that as part of an action plan going forwards. And as part of that as well, so all of this, you're going to make sure that your programme has got this. Now, if you're using Jigsaw, you're going to have your clear learning intentions and your sequence content. Support for adaptive responsive teaching. So again, there are ways that we can do that. It's covered in some of our webinars, and we can talk to you about how you might be able to do that. But it's making sure that teachers know how that they can do that in the plans as well. Making sure, again, social and emotional learning alongside knowledge, that's all built into the programme, but it's really helpful for teachers to understand that that's there, the different learning intentions. And really the other thing, making sure that we've built into Jigsaw lots of space, lots of ask me questions, lots of reflection time. Have you got the time set aside, the curriculum time set aside, in order to do that as well? And that's really important, that this new DFE guidance makes it very clear that we are looking at building social skills as well as knowledge. So if children are going to be building the skills and the understanding and exploring these topics, they need curriculum time set aside in which to do that. So all of those things are sort of things that you may be wanting to think about, not necessarily all between now and the end of term. What can you fit in now? What do you need to know now? And what can you make sure you're continuing to develop and is reflected in your policy? If you do want to talk to staff and you haven't seen it yet, we have got a downloadable slideshow that you can use to explain the changes in the guidance. So if you haven't had a chance to do that yet, again, that's all in that Getting Ready for September 2026 section. Again, you can point governors to the webinar on the website. As I've already mentioned, the downloadable staff PowerPoint. We've also got some explanatory documents and policy, and policy templates. But there is a document about what it is that schools have to teach. So if somebody says, well, what exactly do we have to, what's statutory, what's not? We've got some things that spell that out. There's a copy that can be used in school. There's also a copy for parents, and there's a similar version for parents as well. So hopefully most of you had a chance to do that. But if you haven't, look at what you think is most key right now to inform your policy. And if you haven't done it yet, really you do need to have that policy updated very soon, because you are going to need to make sure that you have shared it with parents and given them time to respond before the end of term. So again, I'm hoping most people here have already done that and they're just ticking it off. We have a template for you. So you should have with it, there are some decisions you need to make, like agreeing your approach to sex education and considering how it links to other documents. So use the template to update where you are now. You will have stuff in place. You will have a policy in place. So use it to update what you've got now. You don't necessarily have to start totally from scratch, and adapt it so really reflects what's going on in your school. Quick reminder of the non-negotiables on your policy, and there are some. It must be published on your school website. That's a statutory requirement. So it must be available free of charge to anyone who requests it. So that's why it must be on your website, but it needs to be accessible to anyone, not just parents and carers. And you've got to keep it up to date and reflective of current practice. So it's got to be up to date by September. The quote there from the guidance as well, I've showed this before, schools have to proactively engage and consult parents. So it's not enough to just say, we put it on the website and have a look at it. You are expected to be doing more than that to ensure that you're engaging with parents. So, really, it's something to be aware of how we can do that. I'll talk about that in a little bit. I'm not going to read through all of this, but there are some really clear things that are set up about what must be in your policy template. You notice in your policy, our template is quite long. It has everything you could possibly need, but this list is drawn from the guidance about what has to be on it. So there are some things which might not be on your existing policy template, or you may be thinking of removing some content from our template, which is fine, and adapting it, but there are some things that do statutorily have to be in there. So do make sure you have a look at those and make sure those things are in your draft. And if anybody questions them, it's just useful to know what it has to have in it, including things like setting out how parents can view curriculum materials, and how teachers will handle questions about topics not covered. So there are some really specific things that need to be there. So use the template to help you, and just do one step at a time. So again, if you use the template, it can help you to really review and make sure you've got all the information you need. Sex education is something that has changed. So may have changed since your last policy. It's still not compulsory. It's not statutory in primary schools. And so that means parents have still got the right to withdraw their children from sex education, not from puberty education, from sex education, but it is now recommended to be taught in years 5 and or in year 6. So we have removed it from year 4 in Jigsaw, and it is now just in year 5 and year 6. And it also new, so something you need to think about in your policy, you need to be ready for, although you're not teaching it till the summer term, but you need to just start being aware of it, and it might need to be reflected in your planning and what you're going to do, is you need to be offering parents support in talking to their children about sex education if you're teaching it. So that is new, and you need to be aware of it and have it possibly, I would say, reflected in your policy as well. So a lot of this is now coming back to parental engagement. So I'm really hoping that everyone now has at least got their draft policy in place, or certainly ready to share with parents, looking at our timing for the end of term. Really, ideally, you'd want it to be shared with parents around now or in the next week, to make sure that you've managed to collect that feedback and make it useful. Parental engagement does not mean that if you haven't got it planned, you have to book a massive meeting now between, in the next week and engage parents. If you've got one, great. That's a great way that a lot of schools do it. But there are lots of other things that you can do. It's got to be a way that really, that's not going to just engage with the same parents all the time, but maybe some of those harder to reach ones. And also your pupil voice as well. Again, it's not about going out and creating massive questionnaires. There are lots of things you can do. So you may already have some of this information. What you've been told at the classroom door. So again, I use an example. One of our Jigsaw schools have a playground, have a table on the playground after school, looking at what we do in PSHE, talking to parents, asking their views. If you haven't had your sports day yet, it's been postponed because of the hot weather, and you've got it soon. But sports day, have a table, have a display out, have a questionnaire out at sports day, that you could share with parents and ask for their views now. There's lots that you can do, as well as a parent meeting. You can put things in a newsletter, make it really visible, and this can carry on through the year. So again, in your policy, maybe say, we're going to how are you going to share information with parents through the year? And talking about the questionnaire, there is an example of one from those on our website from one of our schools. So look at what your school community is already telling you. You don't have to start that from scratch. You'll have lots of things in place. It's just a case of are you listening? Are you taking a record of it? So what are children asking about? And that can be in lessons, during lessons. What is it they're responding to? Well, where have they got further questions? Where do you think actually this content maybe doesn't go quite far enough? Or actually this content goes a little bit far for the children in our school. So listening to that, and you can ask them at other times, what is it they're coming to you? What are they talking to you about? What pastoral things are being reflected? What have parents and carers already raised in the last year? What kind of issues are coming up? Again, I mentioned, so is there anything that keeps coming up in safeguarding referrals or pastoral conversations? How could you, go and talk to your pastoral leads? Is there anything that you think needs to be reflected further in your PSHE programme? And just asking teachers where they feel most confident or least confident, how can we continue to support? So there's quite a bit that will already be going on. So what matters is how are you gathering that information, and keep a record of it, because if somebody comes to us, and it's not about ticking boxes, it really isn't. But if somebody comes in from Ofsted or local authority or your trust and says, well, how do you know this? Why are you making this change? If you've got a record of some of these things you've done, you can say this. We've been told this, we've got this information, we've got parents who are telling us this, we're gathering all of this together, and this is informing what we do. So all the other formal things are great, but actually this is important too. It really matters, especially with those harder to reach groups of parents and pupils as well. And actually what teachers tell you as well, making sure we're listening. So just to say, remember, we've got parent presentations, we've got parent access set up, we've got leaflets, and we've got mapping overviews, some of which you can share as well. So we've got all of those things there. And remember, we've got an example of how you might want to do a parent presentation, but you might want to save that till later in the year, and just at the moment, just look at different ways of doing it. In fact, it is a bit late to set that up now, if you haven't already. As I said, we've got an explanation of what schools have to teach. We've got our snapshot. There are lots of things that you can share with parents. And don't forget as well, our pupil knowledge or our parent-teacher knowledge organisers have got questions on it to support parents as well with the topic. So there's lots there. So all of those things together can then come together once you should have had your draft policy, you're listening to what people are saying, and then what you could do is you can finalise your policy. So what have you been told? What are you hearing that is going to inform that last version of your policy? Review what you've heard. Does it document it? Just keep a record of what you're doing, and then that's when you can take that final copy to governors and publish that policy, and use it, all of those things you're finding out, to plan that ongoing engagement. So the things you haven't been able to do by the end of the term, it's okay if you teachers saying, actually, some of this new content would really like more training on how to teach about puberty for next year. You don't have to teach that. You don't have to have that now. How you can plan that in for later in the year. So make sure that as part of this, you're planning on that ongoing engagement with teachers and with parents and pupils as well. Because this has got to be in place and ready for September. So all of that engagement needs to be collected by the end of term, and you don't want to be working any more than you need to be over the summer holidays. So September is really the start then of you being able to put this in place. So by having your structure, by having your policy that shows that spiral thing, we're not just we're not just ticking boxes by going, we're going to teach about water safety here, we're going to teach about vaping in these 2 lessons for this year group. It's not just collecting topics and putting them together. We really want that sequencing, so that we are thinking about what children need to learn about different topics in different age groups. So you've got your jigsaw framework, you've got your programme of study, you've got your time, hopefully your saved curriculum time to do it, and then teachers have got the freedom to listen, adapt and respond to the children that they have in their classroom at that time in front of them. They've got that policy, they understand what's there to support them, and they can our slides, they don't have a lot on them, most of them, so that teachers can really explore those questions. They can make those changes, and we want teachers to feel confident in knowing what they can do with that, and it's thinking in your policy of how you can support them, how that policy supports them to understand that. So once you've done this in September, you can share what you're doing and make sure you've got that planning to celebrate it across the school community. And making sure that one of those 7 pillars of the new guidance, it's the positivity is really key. So how are you going to make sure that PSHE topics are presented as positive and supportive? It can be easy when we've got a lot to do to get a bit overwhelmed with some of the topics. Make sure that you keep listening to pupils, staff and parents. I've already gone on about that quite a lot, but that can continue to inform planning adaptations. You've got that structure and use that to continue making changes and just keep a bit of a record of it. And consider in your policy, you know, if there are any places where you can identify now about how people can continue to feedback patterns and trends and training needs, all of these different things. We can get very hung up on the parent-carer involvement in policy, but actually it's about everybody being involved in that across the school. And if you can, make sure, you know, as you said, as you come to the end of the term, say we're going to revisit this next year. It's new guidance. We've got new content. Look at, if you can as well now, sort of put in to get, you know, little bits of staff meeting time. Maybe, I know it's really difficult next year to just review what's going on. What have you got in place where you can continue sort of liaising with all of your people in school and also with other PSHE leads in other schools? So whatever you're doing now, if you can try and build into it time next year to continue that process, it's going to feel much more positive and not feel quite as overwhelming, like you've got to have everybody trained and ready for everything for the end of this term. It's about seeing what you need to do now and what you're going to need to do next. So use that checklist that we've got on the website. It's got little ticky boxes and everything like me. I love a piece of paper and a pen, like a nice pen as well. But you're going to need to work backwards. It's got to be in place for September. It needs to have been consulted on and reviewed. So, you know, if you don't want to be doing it over the summer, which I'm sure none of you do, and I don't want you to be doing it over the summer either, what have you got to do before the end of term? You know, how long have you got? It's just a few weeks. So really, you want that policy out being shared in the next week, ideally. So who do you need to talk to make that happen right now if you haven't already? If you've already done all of that, use a checklist just to make sure. Is there anything you've missed, anything that you think you can improve, and go forwards from there. So I haven't been able to look at any of the chat. I'm sorry, I've not been very technically able, but we will stop and take questions in a minute. But just a reminder, we are here. It's a really busy time of year for everyone at the moment, I know, but we have our school support team who'll be helping you. We've got our mentor system, so if there's anything that the school support team can't answer, they can cover most things. You can always speak to mentors, often it's me, and there's lots on the website as well. We've also got, if you're thinking, oh, I've missed it, I don't know what the changes are, we've got some recorded webinars as well. Lots about Ofsted. We've got more coming for next year. If there's anything, topics you ever particularly want for webinars or any ideas, let us know. So there's all of that as well. Or anybody else you think will be good to be on our webinars. You know, we'd love to hear from you because that's really, really important to us. So we're going to go to any questions because then I can see the chat.